He dryer thumped behind the laundry room door as the woman my husband hired stepped into my house already knowing my secrets. As I lay still and said nothing, I watched my fingers curl into the sheets, choosing control over panic. While that steady thump filled the hallway, her perfume and his calm voice blended into something that finally felt intentional. The same sound followed me as I realized this wasn't care. It was access, granted by the man I trusted most. That's when it became clear the danger wasn't my recovery, but how easily my voice could be erased. Still listening to the dryer finish its cycle, I decided I wouldn't argue for my sanity. I'd prove it. Before we start, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. If you enjoy the story, please hit like, subscribe, and join our community. It really helps us grow. The sheets felt like wet sand draped over me. Heavy, stubborn, impossible to escape. Every time I shifted, the fabric tugged against the tight pull of stitches under my ribs, and the ache flared, hot enough to make my eyes water. The bedroom smelled like hospital soap and stale sleep. Somewhere downstairs, the dishwasher hummed, too cheerful for how fragile I felt. The pain meds didn't knock me out so much as blur everything at the edges. Time came in soft smears. Clock ticks too loud, light too bright, my own thoughts moving like they had to wade through syrup. Ethan sat at the foot of the bed like he belonged there more than I did. Back straight, hair perfect, phone in his hand as if he'd been reading from it. "Okay," he said, exhaling like he'd closed a deal. "I handled everything." I tried to push myself up and immediately regretted it. A sharp pull shot through my abdomen and I bit back a sound. "Handled what?" My voice came out thin. "Your recovery," he said. "The house, appointments, and I hired a caregiver." The word made my stomach clench. Caregiver, like I was a problem to be managed. "You hired someone?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady through the fog. "Ethan, we didn't talk about that." "We didn't need to," he said smoothly. "You're in pain. You're not thinking clearly." Heat rose behind my eyes. "I can tell you what I need," I insisted. "My sister could come by, or we could—" He leaned forward and patted my hand. Not held, not squeezed. A light, patronizing tap, like I was a nervous pet. "Mara," he said in that careful, calming voice he used in public, "you don't need to worry your pretty head right now." Pretty head. The humiliation hit sharper than the incision pain. I stared at him, trying to find the husband I thought I knew, but all I saw was that polished calm, like my emotions were noise he was trained to filter out. "I'm not a child," I said, and my own voice sounded smaller than I wanted. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No one said you were." He stood and reached to my nightstand. My phone was right there, my one lifeline to the outside world. He picked it up like it was his. "Your battery's low," he said. "It's fine," I said quickly. "Leave it." He ignored me, walked across the room and plugged it into the charger on the small table by the far wall. Out of reach, beyond the distance my body could cross. "There," he said, as if he'd done something sweet. My throat tightened. "Bring it back." He turned with a look of practiced patience. "You don't need your phone." "I do," I said, sharper now. "I want it here." Ethan glanced down at me the way you look at someone making things difficult. "You want a lot of things right now," he said, "but you're recovering." His own phone buzzed. The screen glow lit his jaw as he read something. Then his thumb moved fast, typing, answering. "Who is that?" I asked. "No one," he said instantly, tilting the screen away like it was an accident, like he didn't realize how obvious he was being. "You just—" I started. "Don't start," he cut in softly. "You're medicated. You'll spiral." Spiral. Another word that shrank me. Another way of saying my reactions didn't count. Then the doorbell rang. Sharp, bright, cheerful. Too cheerful for a house that felt like a sick room. Ethan's posture changed immediately. Shoulders back, face reset into a welcoming smile, almost excited, like he'd been waiting for that exact sound. "That'll be her," he said. Her? My stomach went cold. The caregiver, he replied, already moving toward the door. Just be nice, okay? This is for your own good. He left, footsteps steady down the hall and onto the stairs. I lay there under heavy sheets listening to the lock click, the front door open, the faint murmur of a new voice in my home, and through the haze, one clear thought landed like a stone. Ethan hadn't hired help for me. He'd hired someone to handle me. The first thing I noticed was her perfume. It drifted up the stairs before she did, clean, expensive, and too present, like it didn't believe in boundaries. It pushed past the familiar smells of laundry soap and the faint hospital antiseptic still clinging to my skin. For a second, I wasn't even looking at the doorway. I was listening to my own breathing, trying to decide if I was being paranoid or if my body was warning me. Then footsteps, light and confident, moved down the hall. Ethan's voice floated up from downstairs, bright in that rehearsed way he used when he wanted to sound like the perfect husband. Come right up. She appeared in the bedroom doorway like she belonged there. Navy scrubs that looked freshly pressed, hair glossy and controlled, a tote bag that looked more like designer luggage than medical supplies, and that smile, wide, polished, almost familiar in a way that didn't make sense. "Hi, Mara," she said, like she'd been saying my name for years. My stomach tightened. I hadn't introduced myself. "I'm Serena," she added, stepping farther into the room without pausing to ask. Ethan hovered behind her, half a step back, watching me the way he watched me at dinner parties, like he was waiting to see if I'd embarrass him. Serena set her bag on the chair and nudged my robe aside like it was clutter. "Post-op day 3, right?" she asked, already glancing at my nightstand. "You're on the acetaminophen hydrocodone every 6 hours as needed, plus ibuprofen in between, but not on an empty stomach. Stool softener at night." She said it smoothly, like a grocery list, like she'd memorized my body. I blinked, the medication haze slowing my thoughts but not erasing them. "How do you know my—" Ethan cut in with a pleased nod. "See? She's organized." Serena turned that smile back on me and softened her voice into something babyish. "How are we feeling today, sweet girl?" Sweet girl. Heat rushed to my face, humiliation, sharp and sudden. I was a grown woman with a mortgage and a career, lying in my own bed being spoken to like a toddler who'd scraped her knee. "I'm fine," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Of course you are," Serena murmured, as if my answer didn't matter. She looked past me, at the bathroom door, the dresser, the stack of discharge papers, eyes flicking like she was taking inventory. Ethan stayed behind her, arms loose, posture stiff, monitoring. His gaze kept landing on me, not her, like this was a test, like he was checking whether I'd behave. "Just cooperate," he said quietly, and the word felt less like comfort and more like instruction. Serena drifted into the hallway and I heard her heels tap lightly against the hardwood. Tap, 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 not the sound of someone coming to do hard, practical work, the sound of someone arriving to be seen. She stopped at the framed wedding photo on the mantel. I watched from the bed as her fingers touched the edge of the frame, gentle and familiar. "You two always looked so stable," she said with a little laugh, like it was a private joke. Ethan laughed too quickly, too loud. "Yeah," he said, eyes darting toward me for half a second. "We are." Serena's smile didn't change, but her eyes slid back toward my bedroom, and my skin prickled under the sheets. Today I know this. Real help doesn't walk into your home like it already knows your story. And in that moment, her hand on my wedding photo, Ethan laughing like he was covering something, I felt it settle cold in my chest. Serena wasn't just a caregiver showing up. She was someone Ethan had been waiting for. Morning light poured into the kitchen like it was trying to expose everything, every crumb, every smudge, every weakness. It bounced off the white counters and made the stainless steel appliances look cold and sharp. I shuffled in with my walker, the rubber tips squeaking on the tile, and the sound made my skin crawl. It was the kind of noise that announced you before you even spoke. Serena was already at the counter, moving with calm purpose. Her perfume lingered in the air, clean, expensive, too present, layered over the smell of coffee and toasted bread. She set a small dish down and started placing pills on it with neat little taps, like she was arranging pieces on a board. "Good morning, sweet girl," she said, still focused on her little routine. "Right on schedule." The words tightened something in my chest. Schedule. Like my body belonged to a timetable she owned. I eased closer, gripping the walker handles, the foam biting into my palms. "I usually take the ibuprofen after I eat," I said carefully. I wasn't trying to fight. I just wanted to be treated like the person living inside this body. Serena's smile didn't move. "We'll do it this way," she said lightly. "Consistency helps." We. Always we. Ethan walked in behind me, already dressed like he was heading to an office, phone in hand, coffee in the other. He didn't look at my face first. He looked at Serena's setup, like he was checking the work of someone he'd hired. "See," he said, loud and pleased. "This is what real support looks like." Real support. Like my discomfort was evidence I'd been ungrateful, like I'd been wrong for wanting a say in my own recovery. Serena slid the dish toward me. "Sit," she said, pointing to the chair. Not asking, directing. I lowered myself into the hard wooden seat, my incision pulling when I bent. The chair felt unforgiving, and for a moment I hated the chair for not being softer, then hated myself for needing softness at all. I reached for my water, fingers slightly unsteady, and Serena leaned in just enough that I could smell her perfume again, close and clean like a boundary line. I lifted the first pill. "Can I see the bottles?" I asked. "Just to make sure." Serena let out a small laugh that sounded sweet until you listened. "Honey," she said, "Ethan gave me the schedule." Ethan sipped his coffee and nodded, like this was a reasonable chain of command. "You've been foggy," he said, casual as a shrug. "Let her handle it." Foggy. A word that made me feel incompetent, like my pain erased my adulthood. I swallowed the pills anyway, one by one, chalky and bitter, washing them down with cold water that stung my throat. My stomach turned slightly, and I told myself it was normal. Healing. Medication. Nothing else. When I stood again, Serena stepped in fast and adjusted my hands on the walker. Her fingers were quick, confident. "No," she said, repositioning my grip. "You're holding it wrong." "I'm holding it how the hospital showed me," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. She laughed softly. "You're adorable when you try to be independent." Adorable. The humiliation flashed hot across my face. I glanced at Ethan, waiting for him to correct her, to say my name like it mattered. He didn't. He just watched, expression neutral, like a manager observing whether staff and client were cooperating. As Serena moved around, tidying, I started noticing things I hadn't wanted to notice. Her eyes flicked up toward the little security camera in the corner near the ceiling, Ethan's peace of mind. She looked at it twice, quick and precise, like she was checking angles. Then she drifted past the dining table where my closed laptop sat beside a stack of mail. She paused there. Not long, just long enough. Her gaze skimmed the envelopes like she was memorizing names, return addresses, the rhythm of what came into our house. Her hand hovered near my laptop, then pulled back as if she'd only been straightening the table. Ethan didn't speak to me. He spoke over me. "Mara gets emotional," he told Serena, like I wasn't sitting 3 feet away. "She confuses details, so if she says something weird, just don't feed it." My mouth opened, but my voice lagged behind my anger. "I don't confuse details," I said. Ethan sighed dramatically and looked at Serena like I'd proved his point. "See?" he said. Serena's smile stayed in place, but her eyes sharpened on me for a brief second, measuring, cataloging, before softening again. She gathered the mail into a neater stack and slid it a few inches away from my laptop, as if it was nothing, as if it was just organizing. But when she glanced up at the camera one more time, quick and instinctive, I felt a cold line run down my spine, because it wasn't just me being managed, it was me being watched. The living room smelled like printer toner and burnt coffee. the kind that sat too long on a warmer. Ethan had turned our coffee table into a little office, stack of crisp papers, a black pen placed neatly on top, his laptop open to a bright white screen that made the room feel colder than it was. I lowered myself onto the couch carefully, the incision under my ribs pulling when I bent. The fabric scratched my legs, and I hated how slow my body made me. Serena drifted in behind Ethan and stopped too close, close enough that her clean, expensive perfume cut through the stale coffee. She didn't look at my face. She looked at my hands. "Okay," Ethan said, tapping the top page like he was presenting something. "Routine home care forms." Routine. A word meant to make me shut up. I reached for the papers. The pages were warm and stiff, fresh from the printer. My eyes skimmed the first paragraph, and the small font swam slightly in the medication haze. I forced myself to focus anyway. "What is this exactly?" I asked. Ethan's smile appeared instantly, polished, rehearsed. "Standard paperwork, just sign." "I want to read it," I said, keeping my voice even. He let out a soft laugh, like I'd said something cute. "Just sign, Mara. You can barely focus right now." The micro-humiliation hit fast. "Barely focus." Said kindly like he was helping, but it landed like a label. I felt Serena's gaze tighten on my fingers, as if she was waiting for me to fumble. "I can focus," I said. "I just need a minute." Ethan's jaw flexed. "We don't have time for this." I leaned closer, squinting at the language. Words snagged in my mind. Authorization, release, consent. My stomach tightened. "Why does it mention decision-making?" I asked, pointing at a line. Ethan exhaled sharply, annoyance disguised as patience. "Because it's medical consent. It's normal." "I still want to read all of it," I said. My heartbeat picked up, not from fear alone, from the feeling that I was about to be punished for asking. Ethan sighed dramatically and turned his head towards Serena, like I wasn't sitting right there. "She's like this when she's stressed," he said lightly. "She spirals." Spirals. My face burned. Serena leaned over the table and pointed to the bottom of the page with a manicured nail. "It's standard," she said, sweet but firm. "Just medical consent." Her finger tapped the signature line once. Tap. A clean sound in the quiet room. "And this one," she added, sliding the next page forward, already guiding the process. "Same thing." I stared at my name typed neatly above the line, waiting for my medicated hand to make it real. "I want to call the agency," I said. "I want to confirm." Ethan's smile widened without warmth. "Why?" he asked. "Serena's here. Everything's fine." Serena's voice dropped softer, and the softness carried a warning. "It'll be easier if you just sign." I picked up the pen. My hand trembled slightly. Serena watched it like proof. Ethan watched me like a verdict. The room felt too bright, too still. I didn't sign yet. I just held the pen above the paper, realizing the trap wasn't the forms. It was how badly they needed me not to read them. The house went unnaturally quiet in the afternoon, the way it did when the sun sat high and even the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. I lay in bed staring at a stripe of light on the wall, trying to convince myself the tightness in my chest was medication and healing, not instinct. Ethan had left for a quick run to the office. Serena moved through the house like she was checking boxes, wiping counters that were already clean, folding towels I hadn't asked her to touch. Then I heard the laundry room door squeak. A second later, the dryer started up with a deep, steady whump, whump, like a heartbeat inside the walls. I tried to ignore it, tried to be the easy patient. But Serena's voice floated over the dryer, low enough that she probably thought it couldn't be heard. "She's scared," she said. "She'll sign." My stomach clenched. Sign what? I pushed myself upright and pain flashed under my ribs, sharp and angry. I gripped my walker and stood, legs trembling. Every step down the hallway burned. The carpet caught the walker tips, making the motion slow and humiliating, like my own house was resisting me. At the bottom of the stairs, the air smelled like warm detergent and dryer sheets. Harsh fluorescent light spilled from the laundry room into the hall. I stopped just outside the doorway, pressing my shoulder to the wall and listened. Serena's voice again, smooth, satisfied. She's been pushing back, but she's foggy. She'll sign once she thinks it's routine. A tinny sound came from her phone. Ethan. He was on speaker. He laughed softly, like this was amusing. "She's not in her right mind," he said. "The doctor will back me up." My throat went tight. Not in her right mind wasn't an offhand insult. It was a label, a plan. Serena hummed. "Exactly," she said. "Just keep it consistent, confused, emotional, unstable." The dryer thumped behind her. Whump, 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 like punctuation. I tightened my grip on the walker, knuckles whitening, and forced myself not to move, not to make a sound that could become evidence for them. Then Serena said it. Casual, intimate, and devastating. "Tell your mother I kept the texts," she said. "If she denies it, I'll remind her what she told you about the miscarriage." Miscarriage. The word hit like a fist. My vision blurred. That wasn't gossip. That wasn't something you heard. It was my most private grief. A night in cold hospital light, my body emptying itself while Ethan stared at his phone. Things I'd said afterward only because I thought I was safe. And Serena, this woman in my home, spoke it like leverage. Ethan's voice came back, quieter. "Good," he said. "Keep those. Just in case." Just in case. Like my loss was a weapon stored for later. I stood there shaking, the dryer's heartbeat pounding in the background, and the fog in my head snapped into cold clarity. Serena wasn't here to care for me. She was here to help Ethan build a story where no one believed me. Serena treated my medication like it was contraband. That morning, she brought the bottles to the kitchen table instead of leaving them in the cabinet. The room smelled like burnt coffee and her clean, expensive perfume, and the sunlight coming through the blinds made bright stripes on the tile like a warning. She twisted the caps off quickly, poured tablets into her palm, then held them out like a nurse. Except I wasn't in a hospital. I was in my own house. "Open," she said softly. "I can do it myself," I replied, reaching for the bottle. She moved it away without even looking guilty. "This is easier," she said, and stepped closer until I could hear her steady breathing. I took the pills. They felt chalky against my tongue, and the water tasted metallic from sitting in the glass too long. Serena hovered, eyes locked on my throat. She didn't blink until I swallowed the last one. "All of it," she said, like I'd tried to cheat. The humiliation wasn't loud, it was clinical, like I was a risk. "Can I see the bottle?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "I want to check the label." Serena laughed, light and patronizing. "Honey, you'll lose it." Then she slid the bottle into the pocket of her scrubs. Not the drawer, not the cabinet, her pocket, like she was tucking away my voice. A little later, my phone lit up. "Ethan." I answered, and his voice came through sweet, polished. "Hey babe, just checking in." Then the sweetness sharpened. "Did you take what Serena gave you?" Not, "How are you feeling?" Not, "Are you in pain?" "Did you take what Serena gave you?" "Yes," I said. "And you took all of it?" he pressed. "On time." Serena stood across the table, watching me like she was waiting for a wrong answer. "Yes," I repeated. "Good," Ethan said, satisfied. "Listen to her, okay? Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He ended with a cheerful, "Love you," like he hadn't just questioned me like a suspect. By the time Serena drove me to physical therapy, my head felt stuffed with cotton. The world looked too bright, edges too sharp. The clinic smelled like rubber mats and disinfectant, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My walker felt heavier than yesterday. My balance felt unreliable, like the floor might move. Nina met me at the front and studied my face. "You seem really groggy today," she said quietly. "More than last time." "I'm fine," I tried to say, but my words came out slightly thick. During a simple balance drill, my knee wobbled and I grabbed the bar too hard, metal cold against my palms. Nina steadied my elbow and lowered her voice. "Mara, who's managing your medications?" I opened my mouth. Serena answered from behind me, smooth and confident. "We are." And Nina's expression changed. Fast, controlled, protective, like she finally understood what was happening to me. Today I know this. When someone controls your meds, they're not just controlling your pain. They're controlling how believable you sound. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. It was only a few yards from the bedroom to the bathroom, but my body turned distance into punishment. The runner rug bunched slightly under my walker, the overhead light buzzed faintly, and I kept telling myself, slow, steady, don't give Serena another reason to treat me like a problem. My foot caught the edge of the rug anyway. The walker lurched, my stomach dropped. I reached for the wall, missed, and the world tilted sideways. I hit the floor hard, pain flashing up through my ribs like electricity. My cheek pressed into the carpet and I tasted dust. My breath came in short, humiliating bursts. Serena's footsteps appeared above me, light, controlled. She didn't rush. She didn't gasp. She just looked down like she'd found a mess. "Oh," she said. I slipped, I managed, voice shaking. My incision burned and my arms trembled as I tried to push up. Serena crouched slightly, perfume washing over me, clean and cold. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't offer her hand. Instead, she asked quietly, "Did you learn your limits?" Limits, like I'd failed a lesson, like this was what happened when I tried to move without permission. I swallowed, throat tight, and tried again. My palms slid on the carpet fibers. Serena watched my shaking like she was collecting proof. Then she pulled out her phone and turned away, voice suddenly warm and performative. "Ethan? Yeah, she fell in the hallway. No, I know. I told her to take it easy." Fell, like I was careless, like it was inevitable, like it was my fault. Minutes later, the front door clicked and Ethan's footsteps crossed the hardwood fast. He didn't call my name with worry. He came in like a man arriving to a problem. He stopped over me, shadow cutting across my face. "Do you know what this looks like?" he hissed. "Not, are you hurt? What this looks like my bruises were bad PR. Serena stood beside him, calm as a nurse. "I told her," she said softly. "She keeps pushing herself." Ethan's jaw flexed. "You can't do that," he snapped at me like I'd chosen the floor. His eyes flicked toward the living room, toward the camera corner. I understood then. They weren't scared I was injured. They were scared I might be seen. Their voices lowered as they argued behind me, about schedules, about control, about keeping things together. When they turned their backs for a split second, I dragged myself into the bathroom, every inch burning. The tile was cold under my legs. I shut the door with my elbow and slid down to the floor, shaking. My phone was in my hoodie pocket. Thank God. I tapped Nina's name with clumsy fingers. She answered. "Mara?" "I fell," I whispered, "and they're acting like I did something wrong." Nina listened, then said one sentence that steadied me. "You don't have to prove you're perfect to deserve safety." Today I hold on to that like a handrail. Now I understand I wasn't asking for perfection, just protection. The bank smelled like paper and cold air conditioning, that sterile mix that always made me think of photocopiers and quiet rules. The lobby was bright in a way that felt unforgiving. White lights, polished floors, people moving briskly like nothing in the world hurt. I moved slower, the rubber tips of my walker making soft squeaks that turned heads, even when no one meant to stare. I kept my chin up anyway. Pride was the only thing I still had full control of. A receptionist with perfect nails looked up and smiled at me like I was an inconvenience she'd been trained to soften. "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Mr. Ishu," I said, forcing my voice steady. Her eyes flicked past me, toward the door, like she expected my husband to step in and translate. "Name?" "Mara Ellison." She typed, then nodded and handed me a little paper badge. "He'll be with you shortly." When Mr. Sue came out, he didn't do the fake bright smile. He was precise, quiet, professional. Gray suit, thin-framed glasses, a folder tucked under his arm like it mattered. "Miss Ellison," he said, and the respect in the way he said my name made my throat tighten. "This way." His office was small and neat, the kind of room designed to make you talk quietly. The air was colder inside, and the scent of printer ink lingered in the corners. I lowered myself into the chair across from his desk, my walker leaning awkwardly beside me, and the embarrassment crawled up my neck. I hated that I looked fragile. I hated that the world treated fragility like permission. Mr. Shu sat, opened the folder, and looked at me carefully. "You called about unusual activity," he said. "Before we begin, I need to confirm. Are you the sole account holder, or is your husband a joint holder?" "I'm a joint holder," I said. "We both are." He nodded. "Thank you. There have been attempts to make changes on the account." My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse. "What kind of changes?" He turned his monitor slightly so I could see. The screen glowed blue and white, rows of transactions and notes like a timeline of my life. "Within the last week," he said, "someone contacted us requesting to add an authorized user and to update mailing preferences." My stomach dipped. "Add an authorized user?" I repeated. "Yes," he said, still calm. "The request was submitted as if it came from you." "As if," I echoed, because my throat had gone dry. He clicked, pulling up a scanned document. My name was typed at the top. The form looked official, heavy with fine print, and at the bottom, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was sloppy. The letters were wrong. The M looked like it had been drawn by someone who'd seen my signature once and tried to copy it in a hurry. My hand trembled as I leaned closer. "I didn't sign that," I said. Mr. Shu nodded again, like he'd been waiting for those exact words. "That's why the request was flagged. The signature didn't match prior records." I swallowed hard. "Who submitted it?" He hesitated in a way that was careful, not evasive. "The call log indicates your husband spoke with a representative. He stated he was acting on your behalf." Heat flushed my face. "He can't do that," I said, louder than I meant to. Mr. Shu's eyes stayed steady. "Correct, not without proper verification." A woman in the next office laughed softly, some normal, distant sound, and it made my situation feel even more humiliating, like the world kept spinning while mine cracked open. Then the micro-humiliation arrived, neat and familiar. Mr. Shu glanced toward the door and lowered his voice. "Just to clarify, did you approve any of this? Sometimes husbands handle finances and—" "No," I cut in, sharper than I wanted. "No, I did not approve it." He raised a hand slightly, apologetic. "Of course. I only ask because it's common for spouses to—" "I'm an account holder," I insisted, "not a dependent. I need that on record." He nodded once, then typed a note, the keys clicking like small, satisfying stamps. "Understood." He scrolled again. "There was also a request for a replacement debit card," he said, "listed as damaged." My pulse spiked. And where was it going to be mailed? Mr. Shu clicked, and a new field appeared on the screen. The address wasn't my office. It wasn't our home. It wasn't anywhere I recognized. It was a P.O. box. I stared at it until the letters blurred. A P.O. box meant planning, secrecy, a place money could disappear into. My throat tightened around a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite anger. "That's not mine," I said, voice low. Mr. Hyu's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened, professional concern turning into certainty. "Then we need to take immediate steps," he said. "New authentication, alerts, and documentation of suspected fraud." I nodded, but my hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together under the desk. Because sitting there in that cold, paper-smelling office, staring at a fake version of my signature and a secret mailing address, I finally understood something that hurt worse than the fall. Ethan wasn't just trying to control my recovery, he was trying to reroute my life. The exam room smelled like antiseptic and latex gloves, sharp enough to sting my nose. The paper on the table crinkled every time I shifted, loud and brittle, like my nerves had a sound. I sat upright anyway, hands folded in my lap, trying to look steadier than I felt. My incision tugged under my clothes, but the bigger pain sat higher, in my chest, where fear had been living for days. Dr. Klein walked in with a tablet, blunt and businesslike. "How's the pain?" he asked. "Any dizziness?" "More dizziness than I expected," I said carefully. The door opened again before I could say more. Ethan entered first, smiling too hard. Serena followed, perfume slipping into the room like a claim. They stood close together, a united front of concerned caregivers. "Doctor," Ethan said brightly, "thanks for seeing us." "Us." Dr. Klein glanced at them. "And you are?" "Her husband," Ethan said. Serena jumped in smoothly. "I'm Serena, her home caregiver." Dr. Klein's eyes returned to me. "Mara, talk to me." Ethan answered for me. "She's been confused lately," he said, voice soft with fake worry, "mixing things up, forgetting what she took, having emotional episodes." Serena nodded beside him, small, practiced nods, like she'd been trained on that line. Heat rushed to my face. "I'm not confused," I said, forcing steadiness. "My meds are being controlled." Ethan's smile twitched. "See?" he said quickly to Dr. Klein. "That's what I mean. She gets defensive." The door opened again. Jules walked in like she belonged there. Calm, precise, not apologizing. She didn't smile at Ethan. She looked at me first, and my lungs finally pulled in a full breath. "Ms. Ellison," she said, "I'm Jules Hart, your attorney." Ethan blinked. "This is—" Jules placed a thick folder on the counter with a quiet thud that felt like power. She opened it and slid documents toward Dr. Klein, banknotes, the forged signature, and a typed timeline from Nina. Dr. Klein's expression tightened. "Okay," he said. "Mara?" I lifted my chin. My voice shook at first, then steadied. "I do not consent," I said clearly, "to anyone managing my medical decisions except the person I designate. Not my husband, not the caregiver." Ethan started to speak, but Dr. Klein held up a hand. "You're the patient," he said to me, already typing. "I'm documenting that now." Jules' voice stayed calm. "We're requesting a private consult with your clinic social worker today," she said. "And we're filing a formal report. Suspected coercion, attempted financial exploitation, interference with care." Dr. Klein nodded. "I'll get the social worker," he said. Ethan's mask cracked, anger flashing through. But Jules stood between him and me like a locked door. "Today I understand this. The moment you put truth on paper, charm stops working." When we got home, the house looked the same at first. Same beige hallway, same framed print above the console table, same lemon cleaner smell Serena always left behind. But after a few steps with my walker, it felt like walking into a room someone had searched without leaving a mess. The mail tray by the entryway was empty, not tidy. Empty. The envelopes I'd been watching, clinic bills, bank notices, gone like they'd never existed. "Where's the mail?" I asked. Serena's perfume drifted past as she moved too calmly. "I organized it," she said brightly. "Clutter isn't good for you." I made my way toward the living room and noticed the smaller, wrong things. Drawers were shut tighter than I left them. The stack of paperwork on the side table had been squared, edges aligned like someone had handled every page. I knew my own chaos. This wasn't cleaning. This was rearranging. "Ethan," I called, voice low. "Did you move anything while we were gone?" He stood by the kitchen doorway with his keys, expression already tired. "What are you talking about?" "The mail is gone," I said. "My papers—" He sighed, heavy and practiced. "Mara." "Don't," I said, sharper than I meant. "Just tell me." Ethan glanced at Serena like she was backup. "You're being paranoid," he said. "Serena was helping." "I didn't say stole," I replied, even though the word had started forming in my head. "I said it's missing. And then he did the thing that made my skin crawl. He turned slightly away from me and spoke about me instead of to me, right in front of me. "She's spiraling again," he told Serena with a small, exhausted chuckle. "Just keep her calm." Spiraling. My face burned, humiliation and rage mixing into something colder. I moved to the dining table where my laptop sat. My stomach dropped. The screen was open, bright, and harsh. My email wasn't up, just the login page, like a locked door. A red message sat under the password field. "Your password was changed recently." "I didn't do this," I said, voice thin. Ethan walked over, glanced once, then shrugged like it was nothing. "I changed it," he said, "for safety." "For safety," I repeated. "You locked me out of my email for safety." "You've been confused," he said smoothly. "You click things. I'm protecting you." Serena watched from the doorway, eyes flicking from my face to the laptop, then up toward the small security camera in the corner as if checking what it captured. Her mouth stayed soft. Her eyes stayed sharp. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house made small, settling sounds, HVAC whispering, floorboards creaking, and each one felt like a footstep. I kept seeing the empty mail tray and that password change message like a warning light. The next morning, Toby, our neighbor, caught Serena loading boxes into her car. "Are you guys moving?" he asked. Serena snapped, "No, mind your business," and slammed the trunk so hard it echoed down the street. That night, I slept with my phone under my pillow, the cold glass against my cheek, listening for footsteps in the hall like a second heartbeat. Today I understand this. The scariest crime scenes don't have tape. They have tidy drawers, missing mail, and people who swear you're imagining it. The doorbell rang mid-morning, bright and insistent, slicing through the quiet. I was on the couch with a blanket over my legs, my phone tucked under the cushion like a secret. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and Serena's perfume, like her presence had soaked into the air. Ethan appeared at the door too fast, smoothing his shirt and setting his face into that practiced expression. Concerned husband, devoted caretaker. He opened it with a warm laugh. "Hi, yes, come in, thank you for coming." A woman stepped inside with a plain folder. Calm eyes, hair pulled back. No drama, just steadiness. Cold air clung to her coat. "Miss Calder," she said, offering her hand. "Adult Protective Services. We received a request for a wellness check." Ethan's smile tightened for half a second before it reset. "Of course," he said quickly. "My wife's recovering from surgery. She's been having a hard time." Serena drifted into view behind him like she'd been summoned, hands folded, face arranged into gentle concern. The perfect witness. Miss Calder looked past them at me. "Miss Ellison," she said softly, "how are you feeling today?" I opened my mouth and Ethan answered for me. "She's tired," he said, stepping forward. "The meds are strong. She gets anxious and confused, especially in the mornings." Confused again. Always confused. I started. "She doesn't mean to," Ethan continued smoothly, talking over me. "She's overwhelmed. You know how it is." I forced my voice steadier. "I can speak for myself," I said. Ethan chuckled like I'd made a cute joke. "See?" he told Miss Calder. "That's what I mean. She gets defensive, thinks everyone's against her." Miss Calder didn't react, but her eyes stayed on me, like she'd heard the interruption clearly. "I'd like to ask Mara a few questions," she said. "Anything," Ethan replied, eager. "I'm just trying to keep her safe." Ms. Calder's tone stayed neutral. "I'd like to speak with her alone." The air shifted. Ethan's smile held, but his eyes tightened. "Is that necessary?" he asked. "It's standard," Ms. Calder said. Ethan forced a nod. "Sure, we have nothing to hide." He said it like a challenge. They moved into the dining room. Ethan lingered at the doorway with Serena until Miss Calder met his eyes calmly. Finally, he stepped back. The door clicked shut. That click felt like oxygen. Miss Calder lowered her voice. "Mara, take your time. Tell me what's been happening." My hands trembled in my lap. "He pushed paperwork at me," I said. Power of attorney type forms. I wasn't allowed to read them. Ms. Calder's pen moved. Okay. Serena controls my medication, I whispered. She keeps the bottles on her, watches me swallow. Ethan calls to confirm I took what she gave me. And finances? Ms. Calder asked. At the bank, Ethan tried to add an authorized user, I said. Submitted a form with a signature that isn't mine. Requested a new debit card sent to a P.O. box. My attorney has the documents. I swallowed hard. And Serena, she knows private things. She mentioned my miscarriage, like leverage. Ms. Calder's gaze sharpened. A caregiver shouldn't have that information. Then she asked, gently but heavy with meaning, "Do you believe you are safe in your home?" The question landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't about forms or pills. It was about whether I trusted the man I married not to destroy me. Jules met me in a small conference room that smelled like dry paper and lemon disinfectant. The blinds were half closed, slicing the afternoon light into thin stripes across the table. My walker leaned against the wall like an awkward reminder, and I hated how easy it was for people to look at it and assume I was weak. Jules didn't. She slid a legal pad toward me and said, "We document calmly everything that can be proven." Her laptop was already open. A folder with my name sat on the screen, organized into neat sections: texts, bank, medical, witnesses. Seeing my life turned into categories made my stomach twist, like this was the only language Ethan couldn't charm his way out of. "Start with messages," she said. "Screenshots with timestamps." My phone felt slick in my hand. The moment I opened my texts, Ethan's name stared back at me like a bruise. "Babe, you're spiraling again. Serena is trying to help. Please stop being unstable." Unstable! I scrolled. "You're confused. You don't remember things right now. Don't do anything rash. You'll regret it when you're thinking clearly. He wasn't just insulting me. He was building a record." Jules watched my face. "He's baiting you," she said. "What do you mean?" My voice came out thin. "He wants you to react," she replied. "Angry paragraphs, panic, anything emotional. Then he screenshots it and calls it proof you're unstable." I stared at the messages, realizing how close I'd come to giving him exactly that. Jules guided me through taking screenshots properly. Full threads, dates visible, no missing context. She had me save them twice, like she expected someone to try to erase them. Then she laid the bank documents on the table. The paper felt crisp and cold under my fingertips. My forged signature sat at the bottom, sloppy, wrong, arrogant. "This is attempted financial exploitation," Jules said, tapping the page, "and the P.O. box request shows planning." My throat tightened. Attempted meant he hadn't stopped. It meant he'd only been interrupted. Next came the medical notes. Nina's clinic record described my grogginess at therapy, thick speech, poor balance, symptoms that didn't match my prescription schedule, facts, observations, professional language that didn't care about Ethan's story. "This supports controlled timing," Jules said quietly. "Not confusion, control." She called Nina on speaker. Nina's voice came through steady. "I'll sign a statement," she said. "I'll testify if needed. I saw it." Then Toby's statement. Serena loading boxes late at night, snapping when questioned, slamming her trunk like she'd been caught. Jules stacked the papers into a clean pile. "This is a pattern," she said. "Independent witnesses, a timeline." My phone buzzed again. "Ethan." I didn't open it. I just watched the screen glow, my pulse jumping out of habit. Jules noticed. "Don't," she said softly. "No confrontation." "What happens next?" I asked. Her answer was calm, but it landed heavy. "Emergency protective orders," she said, "and an injunction to block financial changes. We move first, then let the orders speak. Today I understand why truth has to be documented, not just spoken. Now I know the safest power isn't yelling, it's evidence." The courthouse hallway felt like cold tile beneath my feet, the kind that makes every step echo. My heart beat a little too fast, a little too loud, as I clutched the folder in my hands. It was heavy, Not from the paper inside, but from everything it represented. My life, my fight, the things I'd once been too afraid to speak aloud. The weight of it felt like the only steady thing in the entire building. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting a cold, harsh glow that made everything feel too bright, too clinical. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee in the worn fabric seats of waiting rooms. I wanted to step into one of those chairs and breathe, but I couldn't. I couldn't sit still. My mind raced. Every detail of the past months looped in my head. Serena's smile, Ethan's smooth words, the way he controlled everything while I was too medicated to notice. Then I heard the familiar sound of heels clicking down the hall. Ethan's attorney was walking toward me, her steps confident, her posture stiff. She was polished, perfect, just like him. The moment she saw me, her smile tightened. She wasn't concerned about me. She was concerned about protecting him. "Miss Ellison," she said, her tone too sweet, too smooth. "How are you today?" I didn't answer immediately. I just nodded. I didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. She didn't wait for a real response. "I hope you're doing well," she continued. "We're all concerned about you, of course. This whole situation must be overwhelming." Overwhelming. Another word for out of control, a label to stick on me like a badge. She was trying to paint me as unstable, unfit. I could see it in her eyes, feel it in her words. She turned and waved toward Ethan, standing just behind her in his suit, looking every bit the concerned husband, the victim of my accusations. He hadn't said a word to me yet, but his eyes told me everything. The game was still on, still unfolding. I tried not to let the tension slip into my shoulders. I wasn't going to let him control me like this. Not today. The door to the courtroom opened with a creak, and Jules stepped out. She looked like someone who belonged in this place. Calm, purposeful, her eyes locked on mine for a moment, reassuring me. She carried a folder of her own, and as she moved, I saw the slight shift in her posture. She was ready. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice quiet. I nodded. The nerves that had been trembling in my stomach suddenly solidified into something stronger. I was ready. When we entered the courtroom, the air felt thick, charged. The judge sat behind his desk, a figure of authority, his face impassive. I could already tell that today wasn't going to be easy, but it was going to be real. The world outside this room didn't matter anymore. Ethan's attorney started with the usual spiel, playing her role, talking about my emotional instability, suggesting that I was misinterpreting care and overreacting. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I felt small, but only for a moment, because I knew what was coming next. Jules stood, her calm presence filling the space. She walked toward the desk and began laying out the evidence. First came the forged signature comparison. The document Ethan had submitted to the bank, trying to add himself as an authorized user. The sloppiness of the signature, the way it didn't match anything I'd ever signed. The fraud flags from the bank followed. Clear, undeniable proof. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Jules moved to the next piece, the notes from the APS investigation. Ms. Calder had testified earlier, painting a clear picture of exploitation, her calm voice detailing how the manipulation had been carefully orchestrated. The medication control, the secrecy, the way decisions had been made without my consent. Then came Nina's testimony. She confirmed the inconsistencies with my medication, how my sedation levels didn't align with the prescriptions, how I'd been manipulated into a fog, unable to make decisions for myself. Each piece fell into place like a jigsaw puzzle, every edge fitting into the next. And with each fact laid out, I saw Ethan's mask start to crack. His smugness faded, replaced by something I hadn't seen in months, uncertainty. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Based on the evidence presented today," he said, "I'm issuing protective orders effective immediately. Mr. Ellison, you will have no access to the plaintiff's finances. Furthermore, the allegations of forgery and financial exploitation will be referred for further review." A small, bitter smile tugged at my lips. I had done it. The system wasn't swayed by Ethan's charm. It saw through the mask. Serena's caregiver status was next. Jules had already gathered the information. Serena's agency records showed inconsistencies, unauthorized conduct, and discrepancies. When the judge's gaze turned towards Serena, I saw the first crack in her polished exterior. Her face paled slightly. Her agency's investigation had already begun. The courtroom felt cold. The weight of it settled over me. This was happening. The justice I'd longed for was finally being served. Ethan's facade had collapsed in front of everyone, the perfect image of concern shattered by his own actions. Today I know this. Control can only last as long as you let it. Now I understand. Ethan's carefully crafted costume didn't fool anyone who mattered. The new place smelled like clean sheets and fresh paint, the kind of sterile, quiet air you only find in a rental. The walls were neutral. No personal touches, no traces of who I used to be. It felt like a temporary home, but it was mine for now. There was comfort in that. In the emptiness, I could breathe without someone watching over me, without Serena's perfume lingering in every corner, without Ethan's shadow hovering just behind every word. I had left the old house without drama, without a fight. There were no tearful goodbyes, no final showdown. The orders were in place. The protective measures had been filed. Jules had made sure of that. I'd packed a bag, made a few calls, and left before Ethan could turn the narrative back in his favor. He would have tried, I knew. He always did. It was strange, how easy it was to walk away. Strange, because for so long, I'd let him keep me small, keep me in the background of my own life. But once the papers were signed, once I knew the system was behind me, it was like everything that had once felt heavy. My fears, my doubts, even the suffocating air of the house, just lifted. That evening, my phone buzzed and I froze. Ethan. I hadn't heard from him in days, not since the judge signed the orders. I'd expected silence, maybe anger, but this wasn't what I expected. The message was long, polished. He'd taken his time, crafting the perfect apology without ever naming what he had done. I know I've made mistakes, Mara. I'm not proud of how things turned out. I just want you to understand that none of this was intentional. I never meant for things to get this far, and I want us to fix this, for both our sakes. The message carried that same tone he'd always used, the one where he seemed to take responsibility for everything except the things that really mattered. There was no, I lied to you, no, I manipulated you, no, I used you. Just, this looks bad. This wasn't my intention. His words dripped with the same calculated concern that had kept me trapped for so long. I didn't respond. I didn't want to. Then, a few hours later, another message. This one was from Serena. It was a voice memo, her voice shaky, her words dripping with the same practiced innocence. Mara, I don't know how we got here, but this has all been such a misunderstanding. Please, just listen. I was only trying to help you. Ethan and I just want what's best for you. You know that, right? Her voice cracked halfway through, and I could almost see her, playing the victim, trying to turn my pain into her guilt. But I didn't fall for it. Not this time. The message ended with a subtle shift in tone. If you don't respond, I'll be forced to tell people things you're not ready to face. I'm sorry, but I have no choice. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The threat was there, buried in the concern. She couldn't even keep the mask on for more than a minute. My stomach churned as I deleted the message without listening to it again. And just like that, it was done. I wasn't going to respond. I wasn't going to fall into their web again. Jules had already taken care of everything. The divorce paperwork was filed. The financial protections had been put in place, and the trust account was locked down with new authentication. It was a strange kind of relief. A weight I hadn't even known I was carrying started to lift. Nina called me a few days later, her voice warm, almost maternal in a way I hadn't expected. "You're healing faster now," she said, and something in the way she said it hit me like a wave. I hadn't realized how much my body had been holding on to, how much stress I'd been carrying in the corners of my muscles, in the tightness of my shoulders. Even my sleep had started to feel deeper, like my body finally had permission to rest. "I feel lighter," I whispered, and Nina laughed softly on the other end. "That's because you are, Mara. You're free now, and that's the best thing for your recovery." For the first time in what felt like forever, I realized she was right. My healing wasn't just physical. It wasn't just about the surgery or the medication. It was about the freedom I had finally claimed for myself. Today I know that safety isn't just about walls or locks. It's about the way your body can relax when you're no longer forced to be on guard, when you can finally let go of the weight of someone else's control. Now I understand that healing comes when you stop fighting for someone else's narrative and start living your own. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, warming the counter where I stood. The soft glow of the light felt different in this space, cleaner, more natural. I wrapped my fingers around the mug in my hand, the ceramic warm and solid, and I realized something. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The tremors I'd lived with for so long, those nervous, jittery moments of fear, had slowly faded into the background. It was like I was finally inhabiting my body again, free from the weight of constant tension. I stared out the window, watching the world go by, but my mind wasn't focused on the outside. It was drifting back to all the times I'd been made to feel small, made to shrink into the background of my own life. I remembered the mornings in the old house, how the light in the kitchen used to feel too bright, how I'd stand there with a coffee cup in my hands and feel like I didn't belong in my own skin. Ethan's voice, smooth and patronizing, would echo through the rooms, telling me to calm down, to stop being dramatic, to trust him. Serena's perfume would fill the space, too close, too invasive, like she was always lingering just a little too long. I'd watch them, caught in the undertow of their dominance, never quite able to push through. My own voice drowned in their control, muffled by the medication they fed me, and I'd retreat into a silence that only made the walls feel more suffocating. But now, standing in this new kitchen, the distance between that version of me and the woman I was today felt like an ocean. The walls here weren't closing in on me. They were open, inviting, clean, just like the life I was building for myself, brick by brick. The legal process had finished cleanly, with boundaries set and financial separation in place. The court records, the signed documents, the notarized findings, they were my new foundation. Everything was written down cleanly and officially, like a clear line in the sand that separated my past from my present. The institutions Ethan had once controlled, the bank, the medical systems, the legal avenues, had turned their back on him. The fraud, the manipulation, the false narratives he'd spun, all of it was now on record. He couldn't charm his way out of it, not anymore. And Serena? She faded out of my life the way she entered it, through paperwork and consequences, not dramatic scenes. There were no confrontations, no tearful revelations, no big goodbye moments. She simply became a name on a form, an address on an email, a shadow that had once loomed over me, but was now no longer worth my time. I never needed them to admit what they did. The record did that for me. The evidence, medical records, financial statements, witness testimony, spoke louder than any apology or explanation could ever have. I didn't need to hear the words from Ethan or Serena. I already knew the truth, and now the truth was set in stone. Their lies didn't have the power they once did. As I leaned against the counter, the weight of it all hit me. Not the weight of the betrayal, but the weight of reclaiming my life. For the first time in years, I felt a kind of peace that wasn't tied to someone else's approval or validation. My name was mine again. My decisions, my life, my body, it all belonged to me. I stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. I stopped wondering if they were going to pull the rug out from under me again. The world was mine to navigate now, and for the first time, I trusted myself to do it. Softly, I exhaled, the air in the apartment suddenly feeling lighter. Today I know that care can be weaponized. I learned the hard way that people can claim to want the best for you while slowly stripping you of everything that matters. But now I understand that the moment Serena showed up knowing all our secrets, that wasn't the beginning of my downfall. It was the beginning of my clarity, the moment I could finally see what had been happening all along. And now I could rebuild with my own hands, without anyone else's control,